The readings for Friday, June 23rd. The epistle reading is from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 9, verses 6 through 19. Among whom you also are the called of Jesus Christ, to all who are in Rome, beloved of God, called to be saints. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayers, making request if, by some means, now at last I may find a way in the will of God to come to you. For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift, so that you may be established. That is, that I may be encouraged together with you by the mutual faith both of you and me. Now I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that I often planned to come to you, but was hindered until now, that I might have some fruit among you also, just as among the other Gentiles. I am a debtor both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to wise and to unwise. So as much as is in me, I am ready to preach the gospel to you who are in Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also for the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. All right, some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. First, we got a citation here. So in verse 17, where he says, righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, quote, the just shall live by faith, end quote. That is coming from Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. Jumping back to verse 6. New believers are called by the church to a life of faith. It is not up to us to create the church, for the church already existed before us. Rather, we are called to enter the living historic church of Jesus Christ as she exists today. For verse 7, called to be saints refers to the present time. It is not something limited to the future. In the New Testament, all who are true Christians are saints even while they live. See the footnote at chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. See also Ephesians chapter 1, verse 1 and chapter 3, verse 8. Philippians chapter 1, verse 1. Colossians chapter 1, verse 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 10. And Jude chapter 3. From among all the saints, meaning those, quote, set apart to God, end quote, the church canonizes or glorifies certain exemplary saints as having lived such dedicated and faithful lives that they are worthy for us to follow and imitate, as noted in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. See footnote at Acts chapter 9, verse 32. For verses 8 through 12, St. Paul shows a pastoral concern for the Roman Christians, even though he was not the founder of the church at Rome. He thanks God for them in verse 8, prays always for them daily, in verse 9, and longs to see them, in verse 11. For verse 11, Paul had not yet visited Rome when he wrote this letter. This epistle contains the core of apostolic doctrine essential for the foundation of a local community. For this reason, the church reads Romans immediately following Pentecost, the season in which we celebrate the spread of the gospel from Jerusalem to the ends of the world. For verse 13, Paul was hindered in coming to Rome because of his missionary work among the other Gentiles. Though Paul's personal desire was to go to Rome, he submitted to God's will by first accomplishing what God had planned for him in these other places. For verse 14, barbarians are literally, quote, alien people. Here, those not culturally Greeks. See Acts chapter 28, verse 2. For verse 16, St. Paul is not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, thus setting an example for all believers. See Luke chapter 9, verse 26. For verse 17, the righteousness of God is to be in a continuous state of communion with Him. This state of being right with God originates with God and is accepted by mankind in faith. The phrase from faith to faith, we first receive Jesus Christ by faith, then live in Him by that faith. For the phrase, quote, the just shall live by faith, this is one of the passages of the Old Testament, as specifically Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, most quoted in the New Testament. It shows the harmony between both testaments and summarizes the theme of Romans. Faith is a way of life. The righteous, the word just means righteous, are those who not only believe, but live righteously in accordance with their faith. For verse 18, the wrath of God is His righteous and holy judgment. It is not a loss of temper or self-control, but the revelation of His divine truth, love, and power, confronting those who reject Him. See Matthew chapter 25, verses 41 through 46, and 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 6 through 10, and chapter 2, verse 8. The Gospel reading is from the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verses 32 through 36, and chapter 11, verse 1. Therefore, whoever confesses me before men, him I will also confess before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, him I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be those of his own household. Now it came to pass, when Jesus finished commanding his 12 disciples, that he departed from there to teach and preach in their cities. All right. Kind of a shorter one. Let's hit some footnotes now from the Orthodox Study Bible. For chapter 10, verse 34, just before his most violent death on the cross, Christ promised peace to his disciples, but the existence of evil necessitates spiritual warfare. The earth to which Christ came was under the authority of Satan, as noted in John chapter 12, verse 31, and 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. It is therefore essential that Christ wage war against the leader of vice with weapons of virtue, as noted in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 11 through 18. See also the footnote at Luke chapter 12, verse 51. And for verses 35 through 39, so a few verses in there that we didn't read. I guess you can, in your own Bibles, read all the way up until chapter 11 here if you want to get some context. But for verses 35 through 39, it says to see the footnote at Luke chapter 12, verse 53. To carry his cross, a true disciple must be ready, if necessary, to sacrifice even family relationships. Well, hopefully that is not the case. Hopefully you can bring your family and everybody you know and love into Christ. Bring them all home to the true Orthodox Church. That would be swell. It would also be swell if you guys kept following along with me doing these days. I'll upload Saturday's readings for tomorrow. And more important than that, though, if you could please just pray for me, a sinner, it would be very appreciated. And on that note, I hope you all have a blessed Friday. Take care.